Taiwan is a political enigma. In fact, throughout most of the world, it's not actually regarded as a country at all, and Taiwan is really just a name given to a second Chinese state. In Taiwan itself, the government doesn't claim to represent Taiwan. They would regard themselves as China. The China recognized by the majority of the world sees Taiwan as a territory that should be absorbed and a population that should be part of the People's Republic of China. But on the island of Taiwan, the people want to remain independent and be recognized as an independent country and the true Chinese state. So which one is the true China? What caused the split and why it is the most pressing issue facing modern Asia today? In our previous video, we discussed what might happen if China decides to invade Taiwan. So make sure you head back and check that out if you missed it. Today, we're going to dig deeper into why that invasion might one day take place and answer the questions, why are there two Chinas? If you're scratching your head, don't worry. The simple answer is that there are two main players claiming to be the one true China. The first is the People's Republic of China, PRC, which controls a giant landmass we usually think of as China. The other is the Republic of China, currently governing the island of Taiwan. This historical split continues to be a big deal, affecting not just the countries themselves, but also the balance of power in Asia and around the world. How we get to this point is where things get more complex and interesting. It all started back in the late 19th century. In the late 1800s, China was ruled by the Qing dynasty. They weren't the strongest empire at the time, and China wasn't the superpower we know today. Meanwhile, Japan was on the rise, looking to flex and expand its territory. Disaster struck for China in 1894 when they got into a war with Japan, the first Sino-Japanese war. China lost badly, and they were forced to give up Taiwan to Japan in a humiliating admission of defeat, signing the Treaty of Shimonoseki. Fast forward to 1912. The Qing dynasty crumbled, and China became a republic, the Republic of China, ROC. Now the ROC inherited all the claims of the Qing dynasty, including Taiwan. At first, the ROC was weak and had its hands full, just trying to keep itself together, let alone reclaim lost territory. But they never forget about Taiwan and consider it part of China waiting to be taken back. Things got even messier in the 1920s. China plunged into a civil war between two main groups: nationalists, who were basically the ROC government, and the communists. The nationalists were all about keeping China a traditional unified country. They were led by Jiang Jieshi and his nationalist party. The communists, on the other hand, wanted a radical makeover, a communist China. They were led by Mao Zedong and the CCP. This civil war dragged on for decades, tearing the country apart. The nationalists had more resources and international support at first, but the communists were better organized and had strong leadership under Mao Zedong. The tide of the war slowly turned towards the communists, especially after World War II. The nationalists were eventually crushed. Their leader and the remaining troops fled to the island of Taiwan. They took their claims to being the true government of all China with them. That's how we end up with two Chinas, staring at each other across the Taiwan Strait, a situation that continues to this day. Finally, in 1949, the dust settled. The communists emerged victorious, and Mao Zedong, their leader, declared the birth of the new nation, the People's Republic of China, the PRC. The PRC saw itself as a true successor to all of China, including Taiwan. That was far from the end of the story as we move into a period where China was very much divided, a division that stands to this day. The nationalists' defeat in the Civil War wasn't pretty. Facing a relentless communist army, their force crumbled. Jiang Jieshi, the leader of the ROC, knew the game was up on the mainland. In 1949, the communists closing in, he made a dramatic escape with his remaining troops and a significant portion of the ROC's gold reserves. Their destination? The island of Taiwan, still under nationalist control. Landing in Taiwan wasn't a walk in the park. The island had been under Japanese rule for 50 years, and the population wasn't exactly thrilled to see the nationalists return. But Jiang Jieshi wasn't about to give up his claim to being the legitimate leader of China. He declared martial law, cracked down on dissent, and consolidated his power. This period was rough, marked by authoritarian rule and a sense of desperation, but the nationalists managed to establish a foothold on the island, clinging to the hope of one day reclaiming the whole of China. Meanwhile, on the mainland, the newly formed People's Republic of China under Mao Zedong wasted no time declaring itself the sole legitimate government of the One China. This One China policy became a cornerstone of Chinese foreign policy. The message was clear. There's only one China, and it's the PRC. Taiwan, in their eyes, was simply a province that needed to be reunified with the mainland. This One China principle gained traction internationally during the Cold War. The United States, wary of the spread of communism, ended up recognizing the PRC as the sole legitimate government of China. This was a major blow to the ROC's international standing. One by one, other countries followed suit, leaving the ROC increasingly isolated on the world stage. The situation wasn't all diplomatic chess moves. The 1950s saw periods of intense military tension between the PRC and Taiwan. The PRC shelled some islands controlled by the ROC, and both sides engaged in military exercises, raising fears of a full-blown invasion. While the political situation remained tense, both mainland China and Taiwan underwent huge transformations during this period. On the mainland, the PRC embraced a communist economic and political system. Under Mao Zedong's leadership, the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution brought periods of chaos and hardship. However, China eventually embarked on the path of economic reform and opened up to the world in the late 1970s. This started an era of rapid economic growth, lifting millions out of poverty. Meanwhile, in Taiwan, Jiang Jieshi's authoritarian rule continued for decades. However, after his death, cracks began to form in nationalist regime. In the 1980s, Taiwan set out on a remarkable transition to democracy and a free market economy. By the 1990s, the two Chinas had become increasingly distinct and different places. The PRC was a communist giant with a rapidly growing economy. Taiwan, on the other hand, was a democratic success story, a beacon of freedom right off the coast of mainland China. This divergence in political and economic system further complicated the already tense relationship between the two sides. As Taiwan transitioned to democracy in the 80s, it came with the rise of distinct Taiwanese identity. No longer content with being seen as a mere province of China, many Taiwanese began to see themselves as a separate nation with a unique history and culture. This wasn't a rejection of Chinese heritage entirely, but simply a recognition that Taiwan had evolved into something new. This growing sense of Taiwanese nationalism fueled the movement for formal independence. Political parties advocating for independence gained traction, challenging the traditional nationalist narratives of eventual reunification with the mainland. The generation born and raised in Taiwan after World War II had no memory of life under Japanese rule or close ties to mainland China. They were simply Taiwanese. The political landscape changed too. The Democratic Progressive Party, traditionally associated with Taiwanese independence, began to challenge the dominance of the Nationalist Party, which still held on to the One China policy. Elections became a battleground for competing visions of Taiwan's future. The United States played a huge part in this Taiwan Strait drama. The US maintained a dedicated One China policy, recognizing the PRC as the sole legal government of China, but also maintained an unofficial tie with Taiwan through the Taiwan Relation Act. This act committed the US to providing Taiwan with a means to defend itself. The US has strategic interest in maintaining the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. A conflict could disrupt regional stability and pose a challenge to US dominance in the Pacific. However, the US also has to tread carefully, as escalating tension with China could have serious global repercussions. The relationship between the US and China impacts Taiwan's situation. If relations soar, Taiwan could become a pawn in a larger geopolitical game. On the other hand, if the US and China find common ground, it might create space for a more peaceful resolution of the Taiwan issue. Despite pressure from China on the subject, the US continued to support Taiwan militarily and diplomatically, promising assistance in a case of a Chinese attack. The future of Taiwan remains uncertain. The rise of Taiwanese identity creates a pressure cooker of national aspirations. The PRC's growing power and assertiveness raise concerns about potential military action. And the US, caught in the middle, must navigate a complex diplomatic tightrope. China's hungry for reunification with Taiwan, and it's not just about history. They see it as a power move, boosting their global clout and controlling key Pacific shipping lanes. Their leader Xi Jinping even set a deadline, 2049, the 100th birthday of the People's Republic of China. Reunification would mess with US plans and give China a bigger military reach. Economically, Taiwan's tech powerhouse, making it an attractive target. China talks about cultural ties and peaceful one country, two system reunification, but also threatens force. Here's the problem. Most Taiwanese don't want to join China. Their democracy clashes with China's one-party rule, and the memories of the civil war lingers. Peaceful talks likely won't work. If China's serious about 2049 and Taiwan says no, things could get messy. The future of two China is still uncertain, and the next chapter could be explosive and dangerous to the entire world.